Since the murder of Charlie Kirk, there's been growing concern over potential financial mismanagement at Turning Point USA. I've been looking into this and have discovered some shocking information. We're going to explore the question, did Turning Point USA commit fraud? I'm Zach, I'm a certified public accountant, and you are watching Wolves in Finance. In this video, I am very critical of Turning Point USA. Let me start off by saying that I believe this is a good organization, and I hope that they succeed. But they are not going to be able to continue Charlie Kirk's legacy if they are employing people who are stealing donations. The reason that people are concerned about Turning Point USA's finances is because statements made by Charlie Kirk himself. This is a memo written by Charlie Kirk on September 2nd, 2025, that is only 8 days before he was murdered. In this memo, he promotes Justin Strife as the new Chief Operating Officer, or COO, and announces a new Doge-style audit. After this memo was revealed, people obviously wanted to know what were the results of the Doge-style audit. Why was Charlie Kirk concerned with the finances of Turning Point USA right before he was murdered? Here's an exchange on X.com of someone asking that question. Why was Charlie about to audit the finances, and will it still be audited? This was responded to by someone from Turning Point named Tyler Bowyer saying, "We audit our finances every year. They were just audited at the end of our fiscal year in July." He then goes on to say, "There is no scheming. Nonprofits have a 990 where everything is out front. No one owns anything, and our salaries are transparent. If you'd like a quick course on nonprofits, here is a good start." And then he links the accountinginsights.org website where they talk about the Form 990. Okay, number one, that response by Tyler Bowyer is a little bit snarky. And I'm just showing you one of his posts. There are many posts like this, and they are all just as snarky. I would like to ask Tyler Bowyer if he can lower the snarkiness because it is a very legitimate question. A Doge-style audit is not the same thing as the annual financial audit, and everybody knows that. Charlie Kirk wanted a second independent audit on top of the annual financial audit. According to Tyler Bowyer's post, Turning Point is not going forward with Charlie Kirk's wishes. They have canceled the audit. The question is why? Why did they decide not to follow through with Charlie Kirk's final wish? What is also interesting is that Tyler Bowyer is the person who was replaced by Justin Strife in Charlie Kirk's memo. Tyler Bowyer was the former COO of Turning Point USA from 2017. And then 8 days before Charlie Kirk was murdered, he appoints a new person as COO. Tyler Bowyer steps away so he can focus more on his job as COO of their other organization, Turning Point Action. Isn't that a strange coincidence? Tyler Bowyer was removed from his position in the same memo that Charlie Kirk announces a financial audit. Then after that, Charlie Kirk is murdered, and Tyler Bowyer is on X.com saying that no audit is necessary. So here's what I think we should do. We should follow Tyler Bowyer's snarky advice. Let's go look at the 990 forms that Turning Point USA submits to the IRS every year. These contain their annual financial statements. When you look at the forms, there are some very strange anomalies. Several of the 990 forms are missing. Turning Point USA lists 4 related entities. There is Turning Point USA, Turning Point Endowment, Turning Point Action, and America's Turning Point. All different organizations do slightly different things. The Form 990 for fiscal year 2024 is posted for Turning Point USA, but it is missing for all the other 3 organizations. It looks like it was never turned in. This is a massive red flag. So Tyler Bowyer is being snarky on X.com and telling people to go look at the annual financial audit, but the financial audit is missing from last year for 3 of the 4 organizations. Just to show you how strange this is, if we go back 2 years to fiscal year 2023, where we have all the financial statements, we can see that in fiscal year 2023, all 4 statements were filed on the same day on 5/15/2024. That is what normally happens. On May 15th, Turning Point would file all 4 financial statements for their organizations. But for fiscal year 2024, only 1 financial statement was filed for Turning Point USA on 5/15/2025. The other 3 are missing. This strange decision to hide their financial statements happened 4 months before Charlie Kirk was murdered. I will repeat for clarity. Someone at Turning Point decided not to file 3 of the 4 of their annual financial statements 4 months before Charlie Kirk appointed a new COO, requested a new audit, and was murdered. Those 3 financial statements are still missing. Let me give you just one example of why this is problematic. Let us look at the one financial statement we do have for fiscal year 2024 for Turning Point USA. Schedule I shows grants and other assistance to organizations, governments, and individuals in the United States. This schedule shows you where Turning Point is sending its money. We see that a lot of money, $8,560,625, is being sent to America's Turning Point. They are sending it to their own shell company. Now, this is not necessarily illegal, except for the fact that the financial statement for the other organization is missing. We cannot see how this $8.6 million is being spent. This is very important because there are strange variances around this money. I have pulled the last 5 years of 990 forms for Turning Point USA. Here is a table with contributions compared with the largest expense, which are the grants from Schedule I. You can immediately see a strange dip between 2022 and 2023. This dip happens because in prior years, they were sending money to Turning Point Endowment. They were transferring millions of dollars. This stopped in 2021, and they started ramping up sending money to America's Turning Point. Let's break this down. First of all, I find it really unethical that they were sending millions of dollars to their own endowment. I know that a lot of nonprofits do this, but I think it is unethical. Do the donors know this is how Turning Point is spending their money? Turning Point USA is taking in donations and then sending the money to their endowment to invest in the stock market. In my opinion, they should be spending donations on operating their nonprofit, not on buying investments. As of fiscal year 2023, they had $61 million of assets in the endowment, which was generating $1.9 million a year of investment income. Personally, I think that's an unethical way to run a nonprofit, but that's just my opinion. But what is important here is what happened to the missing $8.6 million, the amount sent to America's Turning Point in fiscal year 2024. The amount of money sent to America's Turning Point was getting larger and larger, and because the financial statements are missing, we cannot tell how this money was spent. If we look at the prior year, the majority of the money was spent on other salaries and wages. How is this possible when America's Turning Point reports 0 employees? Does anyone else think that sounds a little suspicious? Let me walk you through this. We have the 2 organizations, the main company Turning Point USA and America's Turning Point. America's Turning Point has never reported any employees. Turning Point USA's number of employees has decreased dramatically over the last 3 years. In the last year alone, the number of employees decreased by 33%. That is a massive decrease in workforce. But while they are laying people off, their salary expense is skyrocketing for both organizations. None of this makes any sense. How is America's Turning Point reporting millions of dollars of salary expense when they have no employees? How is Turning Point USA salary expense skyrocketing when the number of employees is plummeting? And why are the financial statements missing? What was the $8.6 million spent on? In my opinion, what I think is happening is I think there are fake people on the payroll. I think that paychecks are getting sent to people who do not really exist. And that would explain why we have a company with 0 employees with millions of dollars of salary expense. What about Tyler Bowyer's argument that they have an annual financial audit every year? If what I am saying is true, why wouldn't their annual audit catch these issues? The annual financial audit for Turning Point USA, Inc. and its affiliates was performed by an accounting firm called Baker Tilly. In the notes, they explain that they audited Turning Point USA, Turning Point Action, Turning Point Endowment, America's Turning Point, and TP USA Merch. That usually means they audited all the shell companies when they provided their opinion that the statements present fairly in all material respects. That means it is a clean audit with no problems. I wonder if Baker Tilly will provide an explanation why they can issue a flawless audit report when 3 990 forms were never filed with the IRS. And just to clarify, Baker Tilly's audit opinion letter is signed after Turning Point missed the filing date with the IRS. So there is no excuse for Baker Tilly not to mention this in their audit opinion. Just so you understand who Baker Tilly is, let me show you a lawsuit that was filed against them just this year by a Catholic charity.
In a lawsuit filed Friday, Catholic Charities claims they're out millions of dollars after a former employee in their finance department misused funds. And that's not all. The local nonprofit is also going after Baker Tilly, the firm that was auditing their finances at the time. Catholic Charities provides a number of programs, including counseling, adoption, and immigration services. This 12-page lawsuit says the former employee worked for Catholic Charities for over 10 years, holding many positions, including Director of Finance. It says she abused her authority and misappropriated millions of dollars. The lawsuit claims she did this in 2 schemes. The first alleges paying false invoices. Catholic Charities says the second scheme involved the woman using company credit cards for personal purchases like Amazon Prime Video rentals, Uber rides, Ticketmaster purchases, and casino purchases from MGM Grand. The lawsuit also states that Baker Tilly failed to recognize clearly fraudulent purchasing activity.
The lawsuit alleges that someone in leadership at the highest levels of this Catholic charity stole millions of dollars. This was going on year after year after year, and Baker Tilly never mentioned it in any of their audits. It makes you wonder, are they even looking at the financials? This is the same accounting firm doing the annual audits at Turning Point USA. Erica Kirk assumed the role of CEO of Turning Point USA on September 18, 2025, 8 days after Charlie Kirk was murdered. She has been the CEO for almost 2 months. She needs to answer these questions. If someone has lied on the 990 form, people go to jail for that. I want some explanation of why Turning Point USA sent $8.6 million to their shell company and then did not file financial statements. And Erica, I don't know who does the accounting at Turning Point, but if they have not been telling you about any of this, you need to fire your accountants immediately. This reminds me of what happened with Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is one of the most famous investors in the world. But a lot of people do not know that he got in big trouble with the SEC. This happened a long time ago in the 1970s. He had a rapidly growing organization consisting of all these different shell companies. The companies were transferring money back and forth. The companies would own stocks of all the other companies. The SEC opened an investigation into Warren Buffett for fraud. He talks about this in his biography. He describes a scene where he is sitting with his lawyer, Chuck Rickershauser. Rickershauser had been studying a chart that showed Buffett and Munger's complex financial interests. The complex cross-holdings that Buffett had created looked suspicious. Rickershauser stared at the crazy diagram and fretted. There's got to be an indictment in there somewhere. Now, do I think that Warren Buffett intentionally committed fraud? No, I do not. I think his company grew really fast and things got out of control with all of these shell companies. He fixed it by restructuring the company and paying a $115,000 fine. I think something very similar is happening at Turning Point, and let me give you a specific example. In fiscal year 2023, Turning Point USA, which is the main 501c3 nonprofit organization, transferred $664,572 to Turning Point Action, which is the 501c4 nonprofit. This transfer was reported as reimbursement of event expenses. Turning Point Action then turned around and transferred almost the exact same amount, $650,000, to Turning Point PAC, which is another shell company I haven't even talked about yet. Now, this is not necessarily illegal, but it looks really suspicious. It looks like you are taking in tax-exempt donations at Turning Point USA and then funneling the money through your shell companies to your PAC that you can then spend on political campaigns because of less accounting restrictions. Again, this is not necessarily illegal if they structure their transactions correctly and utilize campaign finance loopholes, but it certainly looks unethical. Why is it that almost the exact same dollar amount gets transferred between the organizations? The difference between Warren Buffett and Turning Point, besides the obvious fact of the difference between private companies and nonprofits, is that at Turning Point, we have missing financial statements and a memo from Charlie Kirk saying that he has concerns with the finances. The problem with having multiple shell companies like this is that it becomes very easy for your employees to steal from the organization. Now, just to clarify for legal reasons, I do not have any evidence of a specific crime. We would need an FBI investigation of the books at Turning Point USA to determine that for sure. What I have presented are red flags and a lot of questions that need to be answered. This is all based on financial evidence that Turning Point themselves has posted online. Anyone can go and confirm everything I am saying. All these problems suggest financial mismanagement at Turning Point USA. And from Charlie Kirk's memo, we know that he did not understand what was going on. If someone was able to keep this hidden from Charlie Kirk, that suggests that the people involved are at the highest levels of Turning Point USA. I will repeat, because I know that a lot of people do not want to believe this. The financial statements suggest that someone at the highest levels of Turning Point USA is stealing the donations. I don't understand why no one is looking into this. Erica Kirk has been the CEO for 2 months, and she needs to start answering questions. I keep coming back to the statement from Warren Buffett's lawyer. When he was looking at the diagram of all the shell companies, he said, "There's got to be an indictment in there somewhere." Now I want to hear from you. With everything that I've explained, do you think that Turning Point USA is doing something shady? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. If you want to support independent journalism like this channel, consider signing up for a membership on my website, wolvesandfinance.com. For $6 a month, your support helps me to keep making these videos. Thank you to everyone who has signed up. I'm Zach from Wolves and Finance. Thank you for watching.